The Anaheim City Council met last night, late into the night. It was our first proper vote on the future of Disneyland Forward. And it's been more than 3 years since I've made this video. 3 years, and today we got our first real idea of what's going to happen. We'll give you those vote results and what this means for the immediate future of those expansion plans for the Disneyland Resort. Both the obvious and perhaps some of those hidden motives behind Disney's proposal. Disneyland Forward is the name given to the biggest expansion plans for the Disneyland Resort since Westcott, which eventually became California Adventure. The concept art provided by Disney when they made their announcement shows plans to expand into the Simba parking lot next to the Pixar Place Hotel and the downtown Disney parking lot near to the Disneyland Hotel. There was also art provided to update the Toy Story parking lot into a Disney Springs type venue as we see today at Walt Disney World. But that's just the title and thumbnail of Disney's plans, to borrow a phrase. The real story is that Disney's plans are actually much simpler than that. They want to change the zoning of the properties that they do own from parking only, i.e. Simba, Downtown Disney, and Toy Story lot. They want to change them from parking only to a multi-use. Disney can't do anything until the city of Anaheim agrees to change the zoning. It's really that simple. And for whatever it's worth, what you're seeing in that concept art wasn't necessarily Disney saying, here's our promise, this is what we're going to do if you change the zoning. It was more of a suggestion. This is what we could do if you did approve, if you did change that zoning. That plan and those stakes got considerably higher when Bob Iger said the words Avatar experience about a year ago. Then again, just a few weeks ago, when Parks President Josh D'Amaro said, and I'm paraphrasing, we would love to build the Avatar experience if just the city of Anaheim would approve our Disneyland Forward plans. And it was that statement that led me to believe that Disney was planning to put the Avatar experience, or whatever it winds up being, in one of the Disneyland Forward expansion lots. And so it was that fans of Disney parks waited patiently until about 1:30 this morning for the Anaheim City Council to vote, the first vote on those Disneyland Forward plans.
And the vote is 7 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
My thoughts going in were that it would be approved, and in fact, it was. This morning, the Anaheim City Council voted unanimously 7-0 to approve Disney's plans. Now, I was expecting the vote to pass, but I was not expecting it to be unanimous, as there were certainly members of the City Council who were not the biggest fans of Disney. Well, of big business in general. There is a subset of the council who would rather see the city of Anaheim put more focus on small business rather than big business. But alas, Disney did get that 7-0 approval, and Disneyland Forward is now on its way to the next step. As of this morning, we can say that Disneyland Forward is going to happen, or some version of it anyway. Now, having said that, some will mention this was just the first vote. There's going to be a second vote coming up in a month, in May. But the inference here with the unanimous vote is that the city of Anaheim is behind the Disney company and is behind their plans for Disneyland Forward. I feel like that second vote is just a formality at this point. But technically, we will need to wait for that second vote in May, and then another 30 days after that before the Disney company can start submitting actual plans toward that effect. With that, let's take a look at some of the notable developments from last night's meeting. First, while these plans are definitely for an expansion of the Disneyland Resort, more Disneyland, it's for square footage and hotel rooms that were in fact already approved by the city of Anaheim many years ago in the initial developers agreement. That means that Disney has always been permitted to build that additional theme park space and those additional hotel rooms, but they just couldn't because they didn't have the required square footage, the required acreage upon which to build that development, that expansion. They couldn't because any space that they currently owned was in fact set aside only for parking. Second, the plan being voted on was for an initial investment of $1.9 billion over the next 10 years. Obviously, that's not near enough money to build everything that they're suggesting in that concept art. In fact, I would say that you probably couldn't even build Pandora for that $1.9 billion price tag. So while Disneyland Forward as a concept was approved last night, it is not for the whole kit and caboodle. But having said that, that number, $1.9 billion, should be viewed as the minimum. That's the floor. That's what Disney is willing to promise today. But that doesn't mean they're restricted to that. They're not limited to that. They can build, or they could spend $1.9 billion or $21.9 billion. What's being approved isn't the amount of money that Disney is going to spend. It's about zoning, among other things. Third, Disney will privatize 2 streets, Magic Way and Hotel Way. And by privatize, that means they're going to close them off to public access. Those are streets that currently any of us could drive on. They're going to close those off. And my assumption is that that is because those streets will be consumed by the eventual Disneyland Forward project. And this was one of the more controversial aspects of their plan. Not because it was that these were heavily trafficked streets. In fact, they probably weren't. I mean, there was some resistance from the public in the comment period and through petitions, etc. But I think Magic Way is the street that runs along the Pixar Palace parking structure. It connects Disney Way to Walnut. Not a heavily trafficked street. Same thing for Hotel Way, probably even less so. But there was some concern about that. In fact, it was viewed as a potential roadblock, something that could hang up the overall, completion of Disneyland Forward. But alas, we did get that 7-0 vote. That part of the project has been confirmed or approved as well. Fourth, they're looking to increase the height maximum for thematic elements inside the park, i.e., a castle. The first graphic they showed was for increasing the maximum height for a thematic element in the expansion in the parking lot from 250 feet to 300 feet. But there was also mention of adding a large thematic element in the Toy Story parking lot. They drew a castle in this graphic inside the Toy Story parking lot. Now, not that this should be considered their actual desires. I'm just saying that's in the artwork now. Finally, while not mentioned specifically by the council in this overview of the plans, the Disneyland Forward plans do include the Eastern Gateway, and therefore we can assume that the Eastern Gateway has also been approved. The Eastern Gateway, that's a new parking structure that was planned to be built years ago, built on the other side of Harbor Boulevard. They wound up canceling that project due to concerns from small businesses on Harbor Boulevard. That plan has been restructured, resubmitted, and improved. That is now included in this proposal to the city and should be considered to be also approved. This is a major component of the whole thing because every square foot of potential expansion in Disneyland Forward is on land that is currently a parking lot. The Simba, Downtown Disney, and Toy Story parking lots. You cannot abandon those lots and build new theme park without putting those cars somewhere else. Nothing can happen. None of that stuff that's in the Disneyland Forward concept art can become a reality until they solve that problem first, until they park those guests. Therefore, I believe it is very likely that the very first thing that they build will be the Eastern Gateway. Expect everything else to wait until that is done, until the Eastern Gateway is complete. Now, as a matter of reference, it took about 18 months, a year and a half, to build the Pixar Palace parking structure. We watched them build that every week for a year and a half. So I'm guessing maybe 2 years for the Eastern Gateway project, because this project is considerably bigger and more advanced than the Pixar Palace parking structure was. So I'm thinking maybe 2 years on that. 2 years before they can turn any of that into future Disneyland Forward, a future theme park. So let's assume that they build the Avatar experience first. It would probably take something like 3 or 4 years, I'm guessing, to build what's in this concept art. And where that winds up being is hard to say, but the leaders in the clubhouse right now are the Hollywood backlot with an expansion into the transportation hub, which is also part of the Eastern Gateway project, Grizzly Peak, or in one of the parking lots off Walnut in the Disneyland Forward expansion plans. Best case scenario for the Avatar experience, in my guess, is therefore 2029. And that's if Disney does in fact put all of their priority in that order. Eastern Gateway, then Avatar, and to the exclusion of everything else. It's not likely that Disney is going to do multiple projects at the same time. At least I don't think so. We're talking about, construction crews, man hours. They're notorious, Disney is, for not having multiple projects going on at the same time. It's also budget. So we'll see about that. They have to get individual amounts of money approved as they go. They're not going to just build everything all at once. Count on that, by the way. We said this before. It's going to take decades for them to get all the way to the finish line as envisioned by this concept art. Now, having said that, in talking with a friend, we're talking about Disney's focus. Where are their priorities? He suggested that there was some interesting focus being placed on DVC, the Disney Vacation Club, defining what DVC is in that agreement. And I have to say, this is something that we've been noticing overtly in the parks recently. Disney is in the midst of a full court press on really highlighting, putting a lot of emphasis on DVC today. We've watched them build the new DVC wing, the villas in the Disneyland Hotel. We've watched them build the DVC lounge at the Innovations building in Tomorrowland. We watched them update the DVC kiosk in Tomorrowland. We are witnessing them convert the Blue Sky Cellar into more DVC. And even this thing at Grizzly Peak, that's going to be DVC also. DVC looks to be a very large part of Disney's future plans. And it would not surprise me one bit to learn that Disneyland Forward is not just about creating more theme park space, which that appeals to us, the general public. Obviously, we want to see more theme park, and that's part of the sales pitch. And as such, turn the Disney Resort into more of a resort destination, which it is not, at least not a comparison to, let's say, obviously Walt Disney World, a true resort destination where guests are staying for a week or two. And obviously, hotels are a large part of that. There are numerous hotels at Walt Disney World. But to make Disney hotels the center of that, as opposed to, let's say, hotels out there on Harbor Boulevard, the Good Neighbor hotels. And even more specifically, to make those hotels DVC. I can see a future where Disney simply stops building non-DVC hotels. Non-DVC members will be able to stay at these hotels like they can at the new DVC villas at the Disneyland Hotel, but that all of these new developments will be DVC hotels. Time is going to tell. This is going to be a very interesting next decade or so. Disney has really set me up to, as a news source and a construction source, has really set me up for the next 10 years, 40 years. I'll be dead when this is over. But those are just the basics. This story is going to be told in many stages in the near future. So stay tuned to FreshBaked, as we'll have coverage of this, all of this, more of this, in more detail in the near future, including, I think, we're going to make a trip to the park to kind of envision, to visualize where everything could go and what could go there. Until then, if you like this show and want to show your support, please do consider joining our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/freshbaked. You can follow us on Instagram at _freshbaked, on Twitter at FreshBakedDizzy, that's fresh with no E, and on TikTok. Otherwise, we'll see you next time, guys. Thanks for watching. We love you. Be safe out there. Be kind to one another. FreshBaked.